Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I am Zach Reed. I am joined by JMic at JMic Check. This is the 2024 Dynasty Dummies rookie Hootenanny. We're here. We finally made it. It is exciting, and we are everywhere. We are on our feed. We are on Twitter. We are on the fantasycares.org YouTube stream. So if you're seeing us, if you're catching this live, we are everywhere. We're probably coming out of your toaster if you go turn that on. But we've partnered up with Fantasy Cares this year, both to get this out, but also, and this is exciting for me because I've always done rookie write-ups. It's usually about 20,000 words a year, and I've always done them just kind of for me. A while ago, I did them and put them up on the website, but you'd have to go way back in order to have read those. But this year, you will be able to make a donation to fantasycares.org and get my film write-up. So right now I've got 28 players already done in the can. There will be more. It'll probably be close to 40, 45 when we're all said and done. There are going to be running backs. There are going to be wide receivers. There are going to be quarterbacks. There are going to be tight ends. And so if that's something that interests you, by all means, donate. If it's not something that interests you, donate anyway, because you're not hurting my feelings if you don't want my film write-up. But donate to Fantasy Cares, because that is the real goal, is more money for Fantasy Cares, more money for all of the beautiful charities that Fantasy Cares helps support. And we can't do it without your support. So that just a little bit of housekeeping to start at the front. And we're going to continue to do this live on the Dynasty Dummies, live on Fantasy Cares YouTube feed, to try to reach as many people as possible for donations. But we're here, you're here to listen to JMic talk about this 2024 rookie class.
Mama, I made it. Look, it feels so good to be back. The Dynasty Dummies, back at it again, Zach. I am very ready for the Hootenanny. I'm excited for today. And I think that specifically with this class, as we go throughout the next couple of months leading up to the obviously the combine and the actual draft and all the excitement that's to come, we are in such an incredible position to be able to not only enjoy the chatter, the fun leading up to, but when we actually get to these rookie drafts, and I think that you'll see from our time that we're going to have during the Hootenanny, I think this is a class that you will want to have some stakes in, some skin in the game. So, Zach, before we venture too far down the line, talking through all things, setting up today, setting up the weeks to come, and everything that we've got going, let's talk a little bit. And you did an excellent job last week with the primer, the Optimus primer, getting us ready for this. Talk real quick, if you don't mind. What is one or two things or anything that's really been beating heavy on your chest or heavy in your heart regarding how you've gone about refining your process since last year? Because obviously we've got the folks who have ridden with us for several years, and to you, thank you. We appreciate you for your patience and your kindness as we've been able to navigate these waters here. And for those who may be brand new to the Dynasty Dummies, hello, welcome aboard. We are a ragtag bunch here, but we have a lot of fun in what we do. What's been growing you or refining you over the last year?
So I think the biggest thing for me with rookies and the way the NFL has shifted, and thus my process has shifted, and this may change next year because I think we got a bumper crop of running backs coming in next year. But the last few years, back to probably 2018, since then, the running backs have been kind of coming in dribs and drabs. The way the NFL has approached running back has become different. You don't have necessarily the 15 bell cows. bell cows are sprinkled in here and there. You know, you've got Christian McCaffrey here. You've got Derrick Henry, I guess, is kind of that quasi. He doesn't have the pass catching upside, but you've got very few backfields that are a solid one running back that you know is going to be a stud. And so looking at the players who kind of have ascended in backfields and looking back at my historical rankings, I've noticed the trend where I've graded players highly. We've had the process where you have the combine and you have the draft, and the running backs fall down the draft. The running backs don't get, first 2-round capital. They get third or fourth or fifth. But a lot of those running backs that we identified early in our process, maybe not the first year, but they have hit. It's been the Kyron Williams. It's been Brian Robinson. It's been that type of player where we watch the film, we like them pre-combine, we like them throughout the process, and then something cooled us on them. I think for me, I am now looking to stick harder to my evaluation and making sure that I add some of those running backs that I like in this process that fall down draft boards. And it's a beautiful thing when that happens, because all of a sudden you get a discount and you get a player that you think is talented at a position where that talent matters a lot. It's the whole elevator versus an escalator, where I always liken the wide receiver position to an escalator, where you've got people in front of you and you're moving up, and you're not just grabbing all of those targets when you end up on the field. Running backs to me are the elevator, where you get in, you press the floor, you go up, and now you have control of that backfield, because there is only one running back on the field at a time unless you've got use check. I mean, this is where we're at. And so that pre-combine evaluation is starting to hold more weight for me. And those will be players that I will look for at the back end of the second, in the third, wherever they may fall. And especially with this particular class, because I think running back is going to get driven weight. I mean, you may not see a running back go in the first round of rookie drafts by the time we get to that point in this process. So that's been the big one. And usually it's things that I missed on. And this was something that I hit on but didn't stick with. And so it became a miss. And I think, again, it's the change in the way the NFL is handling things. It's the fluctuation, that cyclical, where you get the big class of running backs and then it goes down, and then you'll have another one. So like we may be in another running back renaissance next year with that 2025 class. But right now, I am looking at my previous evaluations and checking out those running backs and seeing if I can add them for cheap or keep them for cheap.
No question, especially these guys that last season were, I think on the whole, many would have looked at as just disappointments as a running back class. And now seeing the fact that it is taking a little bit of time, in some instances, a year or two maybe, but if there are players that you like or that exhibit the traits that we consistently see that lead towards success and obviously fantasy goodness, if and when they get opportunities, that's going to lead to good things for us on our fantasy teams. With that said, I do want to lead into what we'll be discussing this evening, which is an absolutely terrific start with wide receivers. We've got 6 wide receivers that we'll be talking through this evening. And for those scoring at home, if you're wondering who we'll be talking about today, understand that we'll have 6 wide receivers this week. We'll cover another 6 next week. And obviously, as we continue to go, we like this class a good bit. So I think that our catch-all shows will catch all. We'll be touching on several groups of wide receivers, because we think this is an interesting group. So this week we've got 6, and I'll go ahead and set the stage for you now. We're looking at Marvin Harrison Jr., Junior out of Ohio State. We're looking at Malik Nabers out of LSU, junior. We're looking at Odunze out of Washington. Stop me if you've heard this before, junior. Actually, all the players that we're talking about today are all underclassmen, all early declares. Keon Coleman out of Florida State. We'll be talking Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. And lastly, Troy Franklin out of Oregon. So, Zach, is there anything else that we need to do before we strap on, turn this engine on, and take flight?
I just want to go real quick and say you've heard about this class. The 24 class has been on the radar for a long time. It's been identified as a good class. You've heard people start to put on the brakes just a little bit because there aren't running backs, but I will tell you why this is a good class. And the way I define a good class is by the top end, because that's really where you get your depth. I mean, a lot of people will look at classes and they say, oh, a second round pick is really a first round pick in this class. No, it's not. It's not. But I want my first round picks to really be first round picks. And in this class, you've got at least 3 quarterbacks. You may have 4. I mean, we're at a point now where, like, there are some guys who can sling it, some guys who will translate to the next level at the quarterback position. You're playing super flex, probably, if you're here playing Dynasty. If you're degenerate enough to be in Dynasty, there's a real good chance you're playing super flex. So those quarterbacks make up a big portion of this first round. There are at least 2 top-end wide receivers by my count. And then you have, and this may be a little bit of a spoiler, the best tight end prospect that I have scouted since I've been doing this since 2017, when I started really honing in my tape watching. And so now all of a sudden you're down 6, 7, maybe 8 before we're at a point where we're like, these guys are good. This is like 8 core. I want these players on my team. It's very rare to have a class like that. Last year it was 3, 4, and then you had a couple of wide receivers that we liked, but maybe. And so this is a very good class. It's a great place to start with the wide receivers. And I'm excited to talk about it. It's going to be a fun, 6, 7, 8 weeks going forward.
I cannot wait to see exactly how highly you'll be taking tight end Cade Stover out of Ohio State as your guy. I was kidding. All right. I love that, and I appreciate the clarification. And I think, again, as we go through this, want to be very clear. We do this for several reasons, but most of which, this is a labor of love. No one is paying us. We are not professional scouts in any way. Our job, what we really love and have enjoyed cultivating and getting better at, is watching these players and telling you the things that we see consistently out of these players. So again, we love that we're a part of your process. We love that you take the time to be able to spend with us here with the Dynasty Dummies and understand we're just telling you what we see. We don't claim to have it all. We don't claim to know it all. It says it in the name. We're dummies. But we're here to be able to bring you what we see. And ideally, we've gotten better and better over the years. And again, this is something that we just really love doing. And obviously, we love to be able to chop it up with each other and spend time together too. So without further ado, you've heard the name once, twice, 3 times over. We'll go ahead and get started with, I think, the guy that has as much promise, as much hype as any prospect since, I don't know, insert name here. We're starting with Marvin Harrison Jr., again, the son of NFL great Marvin Harrison. So it's in the blood. We know that. 6'4", 205 is what we have listed here for him out of Ohio State. Listen, the guy's an absolute freak show. We've looked at him and we've had eyes on him, obviously, for a while. He finished 4th in the Heisman voting here in 2023. His last season, again, at Ohio State here in 2023, we're looking at 67 catches, 1,211 yards, 14 touchdowns, In the previous season, he bested that with 77 catches, 1,263 yards, and again, 14 scores as well. We're looking at a player who people have been excited about. A lot of the hubbub, Zach, has been Marvin Harrison. Is it possible that we're taking him number 1 overall in Superflex Dynasty leagues for our rookie drafts? He's been mocked anywhere from the New England Patriots going at number 3 to everywhere in the top 10, or people being able to trade up in the event that they go 3 straight quarterbacks. And if they do, I doubt he goes past Arizona. We'll find all that out in 2 months, but really, let's get to know the players. Zach, what do you like?
Well, time is a flat circle, JMic. If you stick around long enough, you're going to see everything come around again. It's another rookie draft with a Buckeye up at the top. Another offseason where we're crowning a generational talent. That drives me batty. And look, this isn't even the first time that we've seen a Marvin Harrison be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Like, that's already happened again. For the past 2 seasons, Marvin Harrison Jr. has led that potent Ohio State passing attack in receptions, in yards, in touchdowns. He's 6'3", and Harrison is imposing, and he uses his physicality to bend defenders to his will. But bullying defenders is just one facet of Harrison's game. On any play, he can win with speed, he can win with savvy, or with strength. And sometimes he combines them to create separation. Harrison can beat press coverage off the line of scrimmage with a hesitation move or a stutter and a crossover step. And he has a very good understanding of space within his routes, whether it's finding holes in zone coverage or getting 2 feet down on throws to the boundary. You got to love the 2 feet. It's a guy who's already thinking about being an NFL receiver, even though you've only got to get 1 foot down in college football.
I said it before, absolute freak show. There are plays that you'll watch when it comes to Marvin Harrison Jr., where he looks as though he's jumping on a pogo stick to be able to get the ball. The body control that he's able to exhibit while sailing through the air or going high is really a beautiful thing to see, because as a large player, and it's not the case with everyone in this class, as a big player, he plays big when he needs to play big, and he's able to exhibit a lot of, and you'll hear this, I want to give a quick distinction. We'll talk through a little bit of vertical fight at times, which is typically your ability to win high pointing the ball in the air when you and the defender are going up. Then we'll also talk through vertical, and typically talking through vertical separation or how you stretch the field running down the field vertically. Marvin has a unique skill set where it's really an easy speed for him. He's able to turn over, and it almost looks as though he's gliding, but he is covering so much ground in route and after he has ball in hand that he's on top of people before they're really comfortable or understanding, oh, he's here. This is happening now. And I think one of the things you covered, Zach, was really key. And you'll hear this with, at least for me, a few guys today. The spatial awareness, understanding where you are, not just on the field when you're going to catch the ball, but finding the holes in the zone and not just simply lollygagging or running into the next defender in the next zone over. Marvin Harrison does a fantastic job of being able to understand where he is in relation to the holes in the zone as well. Fantastic player who just does absurd things, which I understand why people are so excited to take him early in rookie drafts. But Zach, obviously no prospect is perfect. Talk to us a little bit about the things you saw in Marvin's game that you did not love.
Yeah, while all the mythology surrounding Harrison has been built up like a Greek hero, he is not without his a few Achilles heels. His physical play, while probably his greatest strength, also leads him to get tangled up in contact that he has initiated fairly often. And although the aggregate of Harrison's total body of work is impressive, his effort from play to play is sometimes inconsistent. So, like you talked about him gliding, but sometimes he doesn't even put in the effort to go make a play. And it's not all the time. And man, like he has so many great plays on film, but every now and then you're like, Marvin, what are you doing? Like, let's make a play. And Harrison will also have a few instances of cluster drops. Those don't matter. We're not worried about that. He also has the ability to make up for them in just one play. So history has that tendency to repeat itself. And we're back here again with a very clear difference-making wide receiver leading another very strong class. Marvin Harrison will be drafted come early April. He'll be fed opportunity, and there's every reason to believe that he will continue to succeed in the NFL and for your fantasy team. Like, he's good.
And I think that, at least for what I saw on film, if you play off coverage on Marvin Harrison Jr., you lose. If you play press coverage, I feel like it's almost that may be your only hope at times, because while he is adept at being able to get off of a jam, I'm not sitting there acting like he's getting eaten up. He does allow himself to be rerouted at times, specifically when it comes to zone coverages. When corners are up and playing cover two, he allows himself to be rerouted really easily. And I know that Ohio State's passing game wasn't always necessarily timing based. It wasn't always like, all right, third step, balls out, fifth step, balls out. But those obviously can be issues when it comes to the next level. But again, this is us nitpicking. Like you said, the cluster drops, the things that you be looking up. It's like, I've looked up and it's been 3 straight games where he's got 2 like egregious drops. Like, what is going on? But fact of the matter is, there is very few ways that I think that the story goes sour for him at the next level. And again, his ability to be as big as he is, to be as smooth as he is, to be able to run as well as he does, to be able to hit the corner on end arounds and just do things that a guy usually his size isn't able to do. This is an outstanding prospect that we're going to be really excited about going forward. Enough about Marvin. Let's move on a little bit. This time we'll head down to the bayou down in Marvin and go Tigers. We're heading to talk a little bit Malik Nabers. Absolute amazing standout, running in the lineage of the Louisiana State University wide receivers that we get excited about. Measuring in currently 6 feet, 200 pounds. We'll see what that looks like when it comes to the actual combine. And a little peek behind the curtain for us. Zach actually reached out when he was doing his film work. And he had just got eyes on Nabers, and he was like, JMic, have you seen Malik Nabers? And in response, I said, we got another one. We got one. It was something to that effect. But yeah, I was really excited to be able to dive in as well, because I had watched previously and very, very familiar with Malik's game. But to give you a little bit of summation of his work in college, his best season was this previous season, 2023, where he had 89 catches, 1,569 yards, and 14 touchdowns. Last season, he was no slouch either. Again, 72 catches, 1,017 yards, and 3 touchdowns as a sophomore. But again, that level up that we saw to him as a junior was really a cool thing to see. And I think that his maturation was also moving along with that of Jaden Daniels as he became more comfortable, the transfer from Arizona State, and obviously the Heisman winner. All sorts of wonderful things, and we'll get to Jaden Daniels in a future episode. But Malik Nabers, Dynamic must be his middle name, because my goodness. Zach, tell us about Malik Nabers.
Axl Rose, Robert Plant, Mick Jagger. Everybody remembers the lead singers, the front men that strut out into the spotlight and belt out the hits. But as so often is the case, the secondary talent contributes just as much to the masterpieces / Jimmy Page, Keith Richards, Malik Nabers in this 2024 class. If there is a single receiver built to succeed in this class, it is Nabers. He excels against press man coverage with at least 2 different releases, a stutter crossover step, and a hesitation move. Once he's off the line of scrimmage, Nabers has tremendous awareness and ability to manipulate space, creating leverage over defensive backs by utilizing his speed and deep ball tracking to win over the top. He succeeds against zone coverages as well. He finds huge swaths of separation at the second level, which is something that not everybody does. And it's a piece that we've really started to look at with some of these wide receivers, especially with players that get split inside, can swing inside and play from the slot, but also play outside. Being able to beat zone coverages at multiple levels is really important. And Nabers actually split almost 50-50, his slot snaps and his snap split out wide. And Nabers also has a great sense of feel for the entire play, which is not something that every player exhibits. He often will work back to the ball to relieve pressure on a quarterback. And especially with the NFL's propensity for running quarterbacks and guys who can be mobile in the pocket and extend plays, that's a really big asset to have at the next level.
The dynamism that he's able to exhibit is truly uncanny. It is a special breed of movement that he does, because there is a fluidity about how he goes about his business. However, his ability in and out of cuts, and as you said, I love the way that you put this, Zach. Again, and it's something that we typically talk about with running backs. So it's really cool that we get to talk about this with a receiver. The ability to, once the ball's in your hand, to see the entire field. It's not about seeing just the next level of defenders. It's about seeing what's happening throughout. And he is maximizing every opportunity on his catch and runs. Again, whether it's something where he's catching a screen near the line of scrimmage, or if it's something that he's catching intermediate, his ability to go and make plays after the catch is outstanding. I love his suddenness. I love his burst. And I think maybe the most out of this group, just as a spoiler alert, his escapability and the solutions that he has at the snap and with the ball in his hands. He consistently has various techniques that he's leveraging. He's very creative with the ball in the hand, and he's very creative at not getting beaten up at the line of scrimmage, leveraging various moves. I am head over heels about Malik Nabers. I want to be very clear. I am a big fan. But again, Zach, we know that as wonderful as he is, let's talk about a few of the drawbacks that you saw on film for him.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a perfect prospect, and Nabers has his share of flaws. And one glaring example of that is the lack of consistent intensity between reps. And it's especially apparent when runs or targets are designed to be on the opposite side of the field from Nabers, where he'll give it this play's not designed for me, so I don't need to block, or I don't need to run a route, or I don't need to run 100% on my route. Nabers also has issues with run blocking technique, where he'll either come off his block early and his the defender that he was assigned to block will end up making the tackle, or he misses completely, allowing for some run plays to be blown up before they start. As a receiver, I think Nabers struggles occasionally with the cushion between himself and the defender, where he'll take too many steps before breaking off his route on hitches versus man coverage, or every now and then he'll get caught sitting with a defender against the zone. And look, sure, the lead singer, they get all the glory, they get the adoration of the fans, but don't underestimate the relentless power chords and face-melting solos. The riff that Malik Nabers is poised to play at the next level, it sounds like a hit to me.
I mean, just all the hits, all the hits. There were very few things that I was not a fan of. I too saw the Zach, his propensity at times to drift when it comes to zone coverages. He does a great job of working back to the actual ball, but from a drifting standpoint of why are you going closer toward that defender there? I don't really understand that. But all in all, I think that you covered that incredibly well. And I think the last thing that I'll put, because I want to make sure that this is also highlighted, when we think through the the span of how receivers catch, if you put them all on a spectrum, and let's say that we're looking at all receivers who we consider to be quality wide receivers, okay? We have on one end, and I'm talking specifically about hands catching and your pluck, the way that you pluck the football, or pluckability. So on one end of pluckability, you have the likes of Devontae Adams, right? So like someone who trusts their hands a whole lot, no matter what. And on the other end of, again, still really great wide receivers that don't always seem to trust their hands, Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is not one who's typically you're going to see really plucking the football out of the air. A lot of it is body. A lot of it is a collection plate, almost looking like punt returns all over the field. He'll go up and kind of punt return, try to catch the ball. Both of these guys, in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers, are guys who are very confident with their hands. Very confident. And I love being able to see that at all levels of the field. And I think that leads really nicely into another guy who also is very confident in his hands, one Rome Odunze. Rome was really busy this season because not only was Washington winning a lot of games, they were making waves in the college football playoff. We're looking at 6'3", 217-pound man of a man who was making plays all up and down the left coast this season. His best season as his junior season here, 92 catches, 1,640 yards, and 13 touchdowns for national runner-up Washington Huskies. The season before was an awesome season that really had him on people's maps with 75 catches, 1,145 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So again, we see the level up happen. We see a player who, in the biggest of spots when the lights were shining the absolute brightest, making plays against Oregon and college football playoff over and over when you had to have it. Rome Odunze was there. Zach, was Rome Odunze there for you?
I like Odunze. In 2023, TikTok told us that men couldn't stop thinking about the Roman Empire. As 23 gives way to 24, however, the draft obsessed legion will turn its eyes to a different Rome. Washington wide receiver Rome Odunze, fresh off that huge season, and Odunze amassed those gaudy numbers by winning at all levels of the field, including high point and contested catch situations. Odunze has exceptional hands, which becomes even more evident when he's making plays in traffic. He catches the ball often away from his body and then cushions it quickly to protect it from being punched out or jostled. Odunze isn't necessarily the quickest player on the field, but he makes up for it by playing with great pace. He's not always at full speed, so when he does throttle up, he does it with purpose. And I really like that. It reminds me a lot of a pitcher in baseball where you're using your off-speed stuff to set up a fastball, and so your 92-mile-an-hour fastball may look like it's 97. And while it won't tally you any fantasy points, Odunze is a very good blocker with the ability to pinch in and set the edge, and he'll spring some running backs, them getting off tackle and him kind of helping out. And so there are a lot of pieces to his game that I really like.
Yeah, Rome is one, and again, like I said previously, confident hands catcher. He is one where, as we'll see these guys win in unique areas, I feel like Malik Nabers was one who won a lot of ground battles. So contested catch opportunities that didn't leave the ground. Somehow the 6-foot guy was positioning himself to win all over the place. Rome Odunze, I feel like, was one where when the ball is up in the air, again, don't play small, play big. He's going up and he's high pointing often. He adjusts well to passes outside of his frame. So that gives him an amazing catch radius at 6'3". And it's really cool to see because his ability to track over either shoulder, left or right shoulder, on a various routes is really cool as well. Again, I said his vertical fight, again, when we talk about actually going up and stabbing the ball out of the air, it's outstanding. It's truly great. And again, he's one that I really enjoy his spatial awareness as well. He's able to locate and sit in those zones, and he's also lineup versatile. This is a guy that we're seeing run routes all over the place. We saw him a couple times in a wing space, line up just off of the tight ends behind. We see him outside. We see him in the slot. So Washington was really creative with him, and it was really cool to see him shine this past season in Washington. That said, Zach, we need the other side of the coin. Tell us things that you may not have loved as much about Odunze.
So you mentioned it. Rome Odunze is big. He's 6'3". He's over 200 pounds, and he bullies small corners at the catch point. But I think he's very much bothered by physical play until a contested catch situation arises. He struggles when he's pressed at the line of scrimmage, and even within his routes, more physical corners can push him into flattening routes and flattening cuts and diverging from the original play. Now, Odunze is not a sudden player from his release off the line of scrimmage or within his breaks, and this is especially evident against man coverage. So he's not always separating, and so we talk a lot about quarterbacks either having to throw open a player or throw to an open player. A lot of times they have to throw Odunze open and trust that his catch radius and his ability at the catch point is going to bail them out. Success doesn't happen overnight. In 2019, Odunze was the Nevada High School Gatorade Player of the Year. It took him 4 more seasons to ascend back to the top of this wide receiver class. Odunze feels perfect as a mid to late first-round pick, although the hype surrounding his last season may push him up a little bit above that range. And remember, semper ubi, sub ubi, which is Latin. Always wear underwear.
Yep, not touching that one. I think you put those things incredibly well, Zach. A few of the notes that I'd add to, just for context, he does not play with a specific tempo in terms of variation. There's not a lot of variation of, oh, now you see me, now you don't. And so that often leads to, and I think it's partially a factor of his long speed isn't probably top end is what I perceive when I watch this. And so if that's the case, it also speaks to how often the contested catch opportunities are, because his ability to stretch vertically down the field, he's not creating a ton of separation on those vertical routes that you'd see him running. And so in doing so, they're always contested catch opportunities because the corner is always in his back pocket. And I don't think that he's necessarily slow by any means, but I don't think he has that top end gear that really blows the top off of a defense whatsoever. I also think that some of his work after the catch, while I think he flashes some really nice run after catch ability at times, there are other times where it's basically catch tackle. It's the Mike Evans thing that we've joked about for many years. Not that he's a bad player whatsoever, but he's not necessarily one that I see always maximizing once he's got ball in hand. I do think that he is strong when he has the ball in his hands, but his dynamism when it comes to open field maneuverability, and you hit on it, within the actual route and even after the catch, I don't think the dynamism is something that we always see. His release ability versus press, I think, lacks solutions to win often. And again, just to the two guys that we talked about before, I think they have a lot of different solutions when it comes to winning at the line of scrimmage, speed release, jab steps, and really leveraging, I think, what's tremendous footwork at the start. I don't know that Odunze's there yet. Not to say that he can't, not to say that he didn't flash at times, but consistently, I think that he was lacking solutions to win in those instances. So Rome Odunze is a player that I really enjoy. I think he's fantastic. And I'm really curious to see where you have him, Zach, because I like him. And I think it'll be a fun discussion.
It's kind of the high school romance. where do you like him? Well, I like him, but I don't like him, So to me, there's a little bit of a step down. There's a group of about 7 of these wide receivers that are all really good in this class, at least from my eye.
And here you are sending us back in our hippocampuses where the girl tells you, look, JMic, I love you. I'm just not in love with you. Speaking of not in love, next up on tonight's list, Keon Coleman. We are looking at an absolute specimen of a man. Transfer from Michigan State, where he was looking to get on the basketball team. And so we're looking at a really just top tier athlete kind of guy. Keon Coleman, I think the measurement, and I apologize, I just turned away. Measurement for Keon Coleman I've got right now is 6'4", 215. Again, we'll see at the combine how that ends up shaking out. But at Michigan State, his final season as a sophomore, we saw 58 catches, 798 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Then obviously he transfers to Florida State. They go undefeated. They make the college football. Oh, wait, they didn't make the college football playoff. Man, 50 catches, 658 yards. And really, the season could have been far more lucrative than his 11 touchdowns that he scored, since Jordan Travis got hurt and unfortunately was not able to play the last several games of the season. And we saw Florida State's offense not really have or be as prolific as it previously was. Again, top tier athlete, beast of a man, vertical fight out the wazoo. Zach, let's talk a little bit about the transfer, the golden boy, and a guy that many people are really excited about, Keon Coleman.
I'm going to set you a scene. The pocket collapses on Jordan Travis in a latch ditch effort to avoid a sack and a second down and long situation. He slings the ball blindly downfield. The ball takes off. Its trajectory is almost impossibly high, sailing into the Syracuse secondary. And then Keon Coleman. He wasn't there. Then he was. Out jumping the safety by a full 2 feet, leaping like the Jordan jump man, snatching the ball out of the air with one hand, and that you can dream on. Keon Coleman is big, he's fast, he's athletic, he's everything you could possibly want in a wide receiver. He even returns kickoffs in spite of being 6'4" and over 200 pounds. But the most impressive pieces of Coleman's game happen because of his size. He will play through contact, almost invariably winning the battle of physicality with corners. Coleman is excellent in contested catch situations, and his leaping ability and skill as a high point player is as good as anybody in this class.
There are plays that you'll see and likely have been floated throughout Twitter and any other space, and it'll get more frequent as we get to the actual drafts. There are plays that you'll see, and you'll probably ask yourself, how is a human being able to do that at the catch point? It is really some go-go gadget, grab the football stuff. The things that he's able to flash at the catch point, whether the ball is thrown perfectly or whether the ball is thrown horribly at times when we were looking later on, this guy is someone who will feast on being a red zone threat, or being someone that if you have to have it on a specific down and distance, you're probably going to trust him, or quarterbacks will likely trust him to consistently win. He's an impressive athlete, explosive verticality. I don't think that we have really any questions from an athletic standpoint. The guy is impressive. However, refinement at the actual wide receiver position might be another thing that we need to discuss. Zach, your thoughts?
Yeah, separation is not one single catch-all, even though we use it that way. There are multiple different types of separation and just as many ways to accomplish it. And I love you've been using the idea of problem solving and finding solutions. And I love that because there is not one way to solve the problem of getting open. Unfortunately, outside of vertical separation at the catch point, Keon Coleman struggles to create space from man coverage. His releases are slow and choppy at the line of scrimmage. I think he uses too many steps trying to get off. It's a little bit like if you're playing Mario Kart and you don't time that start just right and you do it a little too early and you spin your tires. That's what he's doing. He's just got the little choppy steps at the line. And Coleman often will misread cushion, and this leads him to use ineffective double moves. So he's trying to put two moves together and make a play. But if he's got too much cushion, giving it that little hitch and then a go doesn't gain you anything because the defender's not close enough to bite on the hitch. And so your go doesn't do you any good. I also think Coleman has a bad habit of drifting against zone coverage. He's content to sit with defenders, and he relies on his strength and verticality to bail him out. Those highlights are tantalizing. There may not be a prospect in the 2024 class who can do more on a single play than Keon Coleman. But a game is a series of single plays, and a season is a series of games. And over the course of seasons, what Coleman does well probably won't tip the scales toward fantasy points.
You hate to see it. You hate to see it for as impressive as he is physically. And as much as I touted the wow plays that he's able to make going up and get the ball, I feel like there are just as many plays where when he's going up, he plays small and he does the basket catching and he's not high pointing. And it's like, where is that every time versus some of the time? And when it causes him to play small in those instances, he becomes rather ordinary when you're watching. I think that we talked about the lack of vertical separation that Odunze can create at times. I think that's something that you can multiply times whatever number you want to put, as long as it's greater than one. Because and again, I want to be clear because I think that some would argue, well, we see that he's able to create separation in certain spaces. And I don't necessarily fully disagree with what that might be in terms of what we all see. But the thing that I do know is that when it comes to running down the field, if it's whether again man on man or even in zone, there are not cases that I could find where he really leaves anyone in that space. And again, we talked about that with Odunze. It's a very similar clip here in that there's a reason that there's all these contested catch opportunities. Because someone's always with you. The in-route dynamism is sorely lacking. And as you said, and I had this written down, he's a drifter. He's not working back to the ball when it comes to these comebacks. So as someone who's as big as he is, if you're going to be playing against the sidelines, especially for your quarterbacks to have these longer throws, unless you're dealing with a Justin Herbert or a Josh Allen, the guys who have howitzers for arms, your lack of willingness to be able to come back and help out your quarterback in that sense on that throw, that extra second could mean that's pick six going the other way. And again, there's a lot of buzz where a lot of people have Keon Coleman really high up the list, and I'm really curious to see where you have him as well, Zach. But I think that it's going to be fascinating to see how it ultimately shakes out regarding his draft capital and obviously where he ends up landing on a roster.
And for me, I think like he probably will get draft capital. Like I've seen mock drafts where he is consistently up in, either the first round or early second. Like you're seeing him go early in mocks. That athleticism. I've had a couple of conversations with people, and they're like, "Have you ever seen a 6'4", 215-pound guy return kicks like that?" And I'm like, Well, yeah, 9 kick returns for 152 yards. That's 17 yards. Oh, sorry, that was N'Keal Harry. Let me go back to my Keon Coleman page. But like, yes, we've seen this athleticism before, but the players with that athleticism that don't use it, I don't think people realize how athletic everybody in the NFL is. And so in order to separate yourself, you either have to be the 1% of the 1% athletically, the Tyreek Hill, the fastest man in the NFL, or being able to do something like that, being Derrick Henry, or you have to do something else to separate yourself. And I don't think that Keon Coleman is either the 1% of the 1% athlete or a guy who does enough else to separate himself.
There you have it. On to the next one. We're going back down to the bayou with them Tigers. Go Tigers. Go Tigers. We are going with Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, 6'4", 205, and someone whose numbers really jumped off the page in this last season alongside Nabers as this passing offense was coming alive. Jaden Daniels was getting his swagger. Things were looking really good down in the bayou. We've got 68 catches for 1,177 yards and 17 touchdowns. Yes, 17 touchdowns. That is a lot of visits in the end zone. Brian Thomas Jr., we're looking at a guy who's very tall, able to go deep. We're looking at a really unique player here when it comes to some of the players that we're looking around the same group. Looks like he's fitting a little bit different of a role. Zach, how do you see the likes of Brian Thomas Jr.'s game?
In the words of the immortal Ricky Bobby, if you ain't first, you're last. We have difficulty reconciling high-end talent when it's standing next to exceptional talent. And Brian Thomas Jr. spent his career at LSU playing second fiddle, sometimes third, fourth, and even fifth fiddle early on to Malik Nabers, some Jamar Chase. There was some booty sprinkled in there too. But Nabers being a special talent should not diminish what Brian Thomas has been able to put on film. The obvious star of Brian Thomas's game is his 6'5" frame and the way he uses it to get open in the end zone. Thomas's length allows him to win contested catches with vertical separation, as well as being able to separate with speed downfield. When a defense fails to get their hands on him at his release from the line of scrimmage, Thomas is deadly. He routinely gets over the top for chunk plays. Unlike many of his peers, Thomas thrives on the sideline, where his awareness and his ability to get both feet down inbounds shines. And although he does a lot of his damage downfield, once Thomas has the ball on plays underneath the defense, it's not exactly a ton of yak, but he routinely adds 3 to 5 extra yards every time he catches the ball.
Yeah, and I think the first thing I even want to say, Zach, is go back. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Second, third, fourth, hell, you can be fifth. I think one thing that I saw, and I think this is maybe where we get a little bit different, Zach. I really enjoyed his ability when we're looking at the geometry and leverage. And again, for the folks who have ridden with us for any amount of time, y'all know I'm a huge fan of people who understand once the ball's in your hand, what are you going to do to maximize the opportunity? This is why we were, one of the reasons why I was really high on the likes of CeeDee Lamb, really high on the likes of AJ Brown, guys who really understand and leverage or use the leverage of the defender to get more or to get them leaning to be able to do more. And I feel like in the reps that I saw from Brian Thomas, specifically this season, because when I looked at a lot of last year, obviously he didn't have a ton of opportunities, so I didn't see many repetitions of this, but the opportunity that he was able to get when he had ball in hand, I really, really enjoyed his ability to make the first guy miss, or even sometimes if he didn't make them miss, making them lean for his long body to be able to ideally get out of that arm tackle that was against his leg, or be able to just stretch out for more. And I think that and again, you highlighted it, but it's also something I think is a really awesome strength of his in this class. I like the way that he's able to transition from receiver to runner. Again, when we're looking at the likes of, even if we're thinking about Keon Coleman, I don't know that he's a quick transitioner from I've got ball, now I need to go do something with it. I think Brian Thomas, while not Malik Nabers, I think he does a good job of that. He's got good hands, and again, I think he's a confident hands catcher. We talk about this idea of someone who's big and plays big. Brian Thomas is one that I believe is a very, very adept at go get it, go high point it, and make people look silly in the opportunities that you receive. And I think that with his ability, and again, I think it's unique for him, his ability to vertically stretch the defense and vertically put pressure on defenders is something that will suit him, whether someone wants to see him as a big slot and use him in really unique ways, whether it be in end rounds or getting the ball in his hands quick, or if he's playing X or Z, either one, he's going to have, or he has the skill set where those opportunities are going to allow him and his athleticism, his speed, to do special things that I don't know everyone on a team, let alone this draft class, is able to do. That said, Brian Thomas Jr., obviously the number 2 banana to Malik Nabers. Why wasn't he the number 1, Zach?
So the combination of sheer size and speed is impressive, but it does not make Thomas unguardable. As good as he is at getting downfield, Thomas sometimes loses separation on deep throws. Although he does have the size and athleticism to re-separate vertically, so like he can go up and get it. I do think that sometimes he doesn't always use his top end speed throughout an entire route. And when he's pressed, I think Thomas struggles to create enough space between himself and the corner to draw a throw. So you didn't necessarily see him be bothered because he wasn't getting the target. So when he was pressed, the defender was able to kind of stick with him. Against zone coverage, Thomas goes through lapses of concentration where he'll be content to sit with the defender instead of trying to find those holes to exploit. But that's kind of the exception rather than the rule. And you mentioned Thomas and his ability to high point and his hands, and they're fantastic, except for when Thomas makes plays in the interior of the defense. I think he tries to protect the ball from the defenders with his body, and he lets the ball travel into his body rather than extend his hands out to meet it. And you actually end up giving more protection if you do that, if you go meet the ball, because now your body is between the ball and the defender by a lot more space, and you can cushion the blow and the catch. So again, it's nitpicky, but those are some things I saw with Thomas. Thomas has never been the star of his own team, but what he has been and always has been is talented enough to draw a significant target share and efficient enough with his touches to produce in the SEC alongside a top 2 wideout in the 2024 class. And you can bet he knows what to do with his hands.
There it is. And Zach, you put it so incredibly well. I'm such a fan of his go-get-it ability. And when he's in traffic, the trouble comes when he allows the ball into his frame. That was one of the things that you consistently saw on film where I don't know if he would get caught up in the moment or what would happen sometimes. And I think that, again, I think you explained that really clearly. But letting the ball into his frame typically caused trouble. I think he's stationary at times on comebacks, and as opposed to having the spatial awareness that says I'm putting myself precisely where I need to be, I think that sometimes he just kind of was like he would be in holes in zones, But I don't always know that it was because he had a very clear understanding of where everyone was. It was just kind of here. I'm just kind of hanging out. Ball's not coming. Oh, dang, bummer. Like, and I think that from a standpoint of, again, consistently moving with purpose, I think that he does a lot more of that when he's deeper down the field than oftentimes in those intermediate areas. But again, a player that, and I even have here at times, because I know one of the things I do like is oftentimes his ability to transition from catch to run. There are plenty of instances also where we see where he's slow to transition for whatever reason. Brian Thomas Jr. offers a unique skill set. He's going to get open deep. He offers some really cool ability to go up and get it. And again, this is a guy that we're looking at. The NFL scouts and the NFL teams are looking at him as likely a first-round guy. And again, to do what he was doing right alongside Malik Nabers is really cool to see. Come on the last name of this evening. Maybe not least. I think we'll see how that shakes out. We are looking at the life and times of Troy Franklin, and you talk about someone who was really happy to see Bo Nix transfer from lowly Auburn, where sadness and people thought he was terrible. And to be honest, he did not play well at Auburn. Really, nothing worked well at Auburn. Shout out to Tank Bigsby for making it out, but then he, you know what? We're not going to bring up old stuff. I'm a little salty, but we're not going to bring up old stuff. 6'2", 178. We're looking at Troy Franklin. His abilities obviously were blown up and magnified as Oregon was making their push this season, neck and neck with Washington out in the Pac-12 in the final iteration of the conference. In this season, 81 catches, 1,383 yards, 14 touchdowns. That's good for 17.1 yards per catch. The guy's able to get deep early and often. And when we're looking at his abilities, we're looking at a guy who led the Pac-12 in touchdowns in 2022 and in 2023. Troy Franklin, Bo Nix's best friend. Maybe not really best friend, but when it came to making plays for the Ducks, he was all over the place. Zach, let's chronicle Troy Franklin, the player.
I want to know if he was at Bo Nix's birthday party.
Had to be. Had to be.
So the phrase "as the crow flies" means to go from one place to another as quickly and directly as possible. Ducks fly that way too. And Oregon Duck Troy Franklin creates downfield separation faster than nearly any wide receiver in the 2024 class. Franklin's prowess as a deep threat starts when the ball is snapped. He has an exceptionally quick release off the line of scrimmage, blowing past defenders who don't get a hand on him. And Franklin's speed allows him to take the top off defenses, maintaining separation while he tracks deep throws. At the catch point, Franklin displays tremendous body control and an instinctive ability to adjust to poorly thrown balls, which will endear you to your quarterback. Maybe that's the best friend portion of the program.
Zach, you mentioned the speed release piece. His speed release is vicious and maybe as good as anybody's in the class when it comes to getting off. Now, here's the really cool piece that I liked about Troy Franklin as well. For a guy with the speed that he has, for his ability to win deep, to create separation and all of that wonderful stuff, he understands tempo. He understands that his speed is a weapon. And so he's able to lull defenders to sleep, especially on releases where maybe he'll just take a couple of like little skip steps. The defender unknowingly, I guess they think that, okay, yeah, I'm about to close cushion, I'm about to close gap. No, it's a trap. Because as soon as he's closing that gap, he's creating separation in so many ways. Smooth transition when it comes to catch to run. We're seeing him catch the ball outside of his frame as well. And again, 6'2", and it's funny because when you see it, someone as tall as he is and as slim as he is, and if he's as big as that actually is, it's really interesting to see how he's able with, like you said, with the body control. He's able to throw that 6'2" frame, and it looks like, man, that looked like that probably hurt. Or when people tackle him, golly, he got twisted up, tangled up. He pops right up. Everything's all good. Clean hands, position versatile. We're seeing him in the slot. We're seeing him out wide. A player that you're able to do a lot of fun things with. And again, his ability to transition from catch to run offers a lot of fun possibilities if he gets the draft capital and if he's not 178 toothpicks pounds. Zach, let's talk a little bit about the downside of Troy Franklin to close out our evals for tonight.
Yeah, since speed is the biggest component of Troy Franklin's game, it stands to reason that a defender would counter by trying to take that away. And when Franklin is pressed at the line of scrimmage, his quick release can be negated. And in route, a physical corner can bother him enough to push Franklin completely off course. An odd facet of Franklin's profile is that while speed is his primary weapon, he's surprisingly poor at creating yards after the catch. He often gets wrapped up by the defender who is trailing him or the safety over the top, where like he's not the yards after the catch guy. And you would think, as fast as he is and catching the ball over the top fairly often, he would be adding a ton of yards after the catch. He just doesn't quite do that. Deep throws yield chunk yardage, potential touchdowns, and big fantasy points in a single play. The downside is the downfield shots tend to be less likely to connect, leaving questions as to how likely it will be for Troy Franklin to drive enough volume to truly be a valuable fantasy producer. Franklin is at worst a talented field stretcher, but expecting him to be a lot more feels like a bit of a wild goose chase to me.
The play strength is something that definitely makes you nervous because you see it at times en route, and you also see it when he's got ball in hand. Early in the season, there were plenty of reps where I'm watching him lower his head to take people on, and I'm mystified. Like, why is that the choice? Of all the skills that you do have, why are you lowering your head and barreling into people? Now, I feel like later in the season, specifically this season, I saw a lot less of it, and it made me very happy to see less of it because, again, we don't want that from you. We don't need that from you, and you're not going to be breaking people off in that sense. But when we look at the problems that we I feel like we point out, there's always one guy every year at least where we're nervous about the play strength because there are times where Troy Franklin looks like, all right, maybe I can believe that he would be 6'2", 6'3", 190. Like, you, okay, yeah, I can deal with that. And then there's sometimes like, man, are we sure that you're 178? Like, are you? And it doesn't always show up. But again, when we think about the opportunities that he has when the game is grounded, not necessarily going up, but specifically when the game is grounded in traffic, when the ball's in the air in those instances, I think he does his absolute best. And sometimes physically, he just doesn't have it in those times. Again, being able to go up and make it happen. And I even think that as a run after catch in some instances, he tries his best, but oftentimes he's not able to shake out for more than what he sees, because I think that he sees a lot more than what he's able to get. I just don't know that he is always physically strong enough to be able to make those plays or get past that first or second defender. But he does know when he needs to just give up, and he often just will go down and avoid being able to take hits where he's getting blasted, specifically over the middle. So Troy Franklin's a very, very interesting player. And again, one of these guys where some folks have him, hey, is he a fringe first round guy? Is he the type of guy that's going to go, early day 2 to be Bryce Young's Whoopie out in Carolina? So I think there's a lot to be discussed. Zach, we've talked about a lot of guys. It's been an absolutely beautiful evening. You know where we got to go at this point. We've got to figure out who lands where. Now, as we get to fill this board out even more over the next coming weeks for those, again, who may be new to the program, obviously we'll be adding players to this. We'll tell you where people slot when it looks like the tiers and kind of where all of our grades are. And I want to be clear again, these are our film grades. These aren't necessarily the orders that we're going to take these guys when it comes to the actual NFL draft, because the picture, the puzzles are going to be a lot more complete at that point. This is a part of the process. This is what we say, hey, when we grade them on these specific criteria that Zach talked about last week, we go off of the same criteria. I've cut my teeth in the school of Zach Reed and film watching when it comes to these prospects. And so I'm curious, Zach, when we look at these 6 guys, what do the film grades speak or call out to you at this time?
So I opened this show, and you don't know it yet because we haven't done the podcast and I haven't put the open, but I opened this show with the theme from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. The rankings for this group of 6 feels like there was a song on Sesame Street. If one of these things is not like the others, and that's how I feel. I've got it Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1. And he is a top 5 grade that I've given out since 2017. I've got Malik Nabers at 2. He is also a top 10 grade that I've given out since 2017. So don't think you're getting a secondary prize if you end up drafting Malik Nabers in your rookie draft. You should be very happy about that.
Yes.
With this group of 6, I've got Brian Thomas Jr. as the next player. I've got Odunze at 4, Troy Franklin at 5, and the one of these things that just doesn't belong is Keon Coleman for me. He plays in a style that is not one that I gravitate toward, and he also fails at a lot of points and a lot of situations that I'm looking for positive production. Now, we're not cheering for any of these guys to fail. I hope all of these players are great. It's better for us as fantasy players if everybody succeeds. Plus, and more importantly, these young men are embarking on their career. It's the culmination of their dreams. They've put all of this hard work and sweat and tears into it. We're cheering for all of them. But this, we gotta grade. We gotta put them in some order, and that's where I'm at.
Very, very well put, Zach. And I think that our boy Jagger May at Fantasy Blue Chip on Twitter, X, whatever you like nowadays, he put it really well. I can't find the tweet at the moment, but I retweeted it the other day, and I was thinking, like, yes, like this is it. So when you're looking at the top of this class with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers, like a lot of people are shouting at each other on the interwebs. No, it's this guy. No, it's this guy. It's that guy. Look, y'all, we are looking at 2 incredible prospects. Incredible prospects. I just want to be clear so people aren't getting bent out of shape all the time. I have Marvin Harrison graded 1 point higher than Malik Nabers. One single solitary point. And I want to be clear too, because I do think there are spaces where Malik Nabers does certain things better than Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
Certain areas where I have him graded out higher, and it excites me a lot to be able to be able to play with the idea. Okay, what are we looking at here? If everyone's trading up to go get Malik, am I getting this? Excuse me, everyone's trading to get Marvin. Am I getting discount Malik in the middle parts of my fantasy draft? Because if I am, I'm an incredibly happy boy. Just want to throw that out there. So got Marvin and Malik in their own tier currently. I won't reveal all the beans yet. Next for number 3 for me, I've got Odunze. And while not in their tier, I really like what he offers. Next on the list for me would be Brian Thomas Jr. Under him, and I think that would be a pretty. I think there's tier breaks, and we'll get to all those things. Tier breakdown. We've got Troy Franklin, who again I'm really excited about, especially if someone can be really creative with him and he's not toothpicks. I think that it could be really fun. And similar to you, Keon Coleman, while he flashes so much awesome stuff, I am just simply not seeing with the evaluations that I have. I wasn't seeing the things that allow for him to be able to stand out consistently at the NFL level in this fantasy space for us.
Yeah,
That's how I got it.
that's going to be the one where there's always a player when I put out my top 10 or 12, and I'm going to do that here probably sometime this week, where I send out that tweet, and there's always a player where people are like, how come you don't have him ranked? And I'm like, and that'll be Coleman, because he's like right on the cusp of 12 for me overall. He may be a little bit below that. I'd have to go back and revisit, but again, that's not to say he is a bad player.
Right.
It is also to say that this is a great class. I mean, they're really, I don't remember a time when I was as excited about this many players. And the top of it is, I mean, this is well, the only class that I've looked at that has this top end of a wide receiver was the 2020, where you had Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
And like, to like, overall in my overall overarching rankings, CeeDee Lamb is 1 since 2017. Justin Jefferson is 2. And then 3 and 4 is Harrison tied. So we're like, this is a very good class. It's a very fun receiving group. There are going to be some other positions that have top end guys. I am so excited to chop this all up with you, JMic. This was so much fun. I'm happy that we had people watching, people in the chat. It's going to be fantastic to have people listen again. But like, for me, it's so much fun doing the work and then coming and talking to you about it. And even if there was nobody watching, I'd be doing this. This is so much fun.
You love to see it, man. This is such a treat for us. And again, for those who have been rocking with us for years, thank you. We're grateful for you. Thank you for your patience, as I've had to navigate just a lot of craziness in my life, and schedule not being what I would love it to be from a recording standpoint. And for those who are new, or maybe this is your first Hootenanny, get your cowboy hats, get your spoons. We're gonna have a good time. We're gonna dance these next several weeks away. We'll continue to bring the goods on the things that we think, what we've seen as we've watched and combed through film over the last 3 months now. Golly. We've been putting in work, y'all, and we really enjoy it. And there's going to come a time where we get your engagement and where we get your input. So if there are players that we don't talk through in these first rounds as we walk through these positions, we do have catch-all shows at the end where we solicit your players that you would want to hear about. If there's some random player at who knows where state, we're happy to try to be able to find them, to be able to talk through them. You want us to talk through Ricky Pearsall or the likes of Luke McCaffrey or whomever it is, we're happy to be able to add them as well as we go. But the next 6 that we'll have, just give you a quick preview. I won't spoil the whole bean, Zach. I'll give you a quick preview. We're talking all things Texas. I'm gonna say a couple guys
like a 2-step.
A little Texas 2-step. Don't get too crazy now. So as we wrap up the evening, again, thank you all for riding with us. Everybody in the live chat, thank you all for the vibes. Thank you all for checking in and leaning in with us. Zach, I'll leave the final words to you to be able to close this down.
Yeah, I want to shout out one more time, Fantasy Cares, fantasycares.org. Thank you for letting us borrow your feed. But also, man, it's my favorite part of this entire community, the fact that everybody comes together and we're all playing fantasy football with disposable income of some sort or another, and being able to use some of that for good, whether you make a donation and grab some of my film notes, or whether you just make a donation to Fantasy Cares. They've always got some great auctions going for signed jerseys and helmets and that sort of thing. There are giveaways. It's just a fantastic organization. The Scott Fish, it's his kind of brainchild, but it's blossomed. He was the catalyst, but the community has taken it and run with it and made it such a beautiful thing. So be part of that. Get involved, donate, take one of your league dues and donate it. And if it's not to Fantasy Cares, send it somewhere else. But do some good with it. And we appreciate everyone rolling with us. We'll be back again next week. It'll be part 2 of wide receivers for the Hootenanny. JMic at JMic Check. You can follow him on Twitter. I am at Tacit Assassin 13. The Dynasty Dummies are at Dynasty Dummies, and this has been the Dynasty Dummies 2024 Rookie Hootenanny Show. It's in the books. Thank you for listening. Peace. Now I got to find that click.